This is something that came to me when I was in upstate New York at a retreat center, a Karma Kagi retreat center called Karmaling, in a little town called Delhi, New York, way up in the mountains. Um, and it was a Mahakala weekend. This was the entire weekend was devoted to chanting to Mahakala, who is this fierce, wrathful deity in Tibetan Buddhism in Vajrayana. Uh, I had never encountered this deity before. I had always worked with very gentle, loving ones, but this weekend was extraordinarily powerful for me. Um, there were there was a retinue of probably at least 30 or 40 monks, and the Mahakala practice had also been happening at KTD, which is the monastery about an hour and a half south of there. We had also visited that place before going to the retreat center. And there they were doing Mahakala practice. And so when I say Mahakala practice, we're talking about a lot of chanting. We're talking about invoking um, the power of uh, he whom we know to be a wrathful deity, Mahakala. And I'll talk about what that means in a moment. Mahakala, um, out of just profound, profound, fierce compassion, becomes what is called a Dharma protector, Dharmapala. Dharmapala means Dharma protector. And whether it's Mahakala or Yamantaka or Vajrakilaya or Black Tara, all of these deities are seen to be extremely powerful, very, very powerful energy. And they're not to be cultivated or practiced lightly. So motivation has to be very, very strong when working with these deities, and in particular, the motivation of fierce compassion, of loyalty and protecting ourselves and others from suffering. This is sort of the strength and the power implicit in these what we call wrathful deities. And when I was at Karmaling in these beautiful mountains, and there was snow everywhere, um, there was the chanting. I actually found myself speechless during the chanting. First of all, it was very fast, and it was a chant that I didn't know. And so I settled back and began meditating. And as I was sitting there meditating with this powerful voices of the monks and the nuns chanting, um, it was almost like a visionary experience where I encountered this power. Um, and I was so moved that I walked up the hill to the cabins where people were doing 3-year retreat. And I began listening to the sounds of the mountain and the voice in the landscape around us. Another practice that was done during that weekend was called Chud practice. Chud, which, if you don't know what that is, it's an earth-based Bon shaman practice that the Tibetans, some of the Tibetan Buddhists will cultivate. And it's there to sort of appease within the land, within the landscape around the center, what are called hungry ghosts, or beings that are wandering out of their need for sustenance and greed. And basically the cosmology here is that these beings get stuck in this, might compare it to purgatory. And so part of the practice is to feed them the nourishment of wholesome dharma so that they can ultimately too have opportunity to transform. So there was a lot happening this weekend, and a lot of it was really sort of plugging me and rooting me into the land. It was a beautiful environment anyway. So this was something that part of the realization here was that this voice, this strength coming from this being Mahakala is not separate from my own mind. In the Vajrayana tradition, after all, in the tantric form of Tibetan Buddhism, all is the path. Everything is, including our anger, our wrath, our sorrow, and the power represented by Mahakala is at the heart of our own clear, sharp, the mind of true wisdom. And it speaks truth to power, yeah? And it brings power into truth. It empowers truth. And it's that if you've ever had the experience of being really angry and really clear at the same time, or your mind is just crystalline and sharp and unobstructed, it's like you can see for miles, yeah? Has anybody had this experience? There's this heightening, yeah? There can also be a lot of other stuff that happens. The fog of being distraught and frustrated, the narrative, all kinds of other things that hijack that clarity. But the rawness of that emotion is the key. And there is a key to this where we can actually harness that energy. And so wrathful energy, as much as we may be taught when we're meditating to settle the mind, relate to things that are challenging with compassion, with kindness, be gentle, be flexible, let the breath soften the muscles in the body while feeling also stability in the body, and all of these things that we do every week when we meditate. All well and good, yeah? Very important. And it's a yes and. To know that sometimes we may need to metabolize the harsh, jagged edges of rage, of anger, frustration, or outrage. Yeah. And as we know, there's been a lot of this going on for years in our society, in this polarized world that we've been in. That was one of the reasons why the 7 stages of freedom attending reality, why we spent so many weeks on that, was to really contextualize that into our world and situation in our nation. And part of that was the 6th stage, fierce compassion. And so some of that will overlap with what we're talking about here, especially the fierce part. This ferocity, yeah, this powerful energy that each of us have, whether we know it or not, is also directly linked to our awakening. Not in the sense that what is called wrathful energy is destructive, which it can be. But if we're really being mindful with our emotions, we can use this as a form of protection. It becomes homeopathic. Right? That which destroys us can also transform us. So instead of anger being like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, yeah, which is a commonly used metaphor in Buddhism, we're aware of what this poison is doing to us, and we're learning how to integrate it in tolerable amounts to become stronger. Now, how does this work? That all sounds really fine and wonderful. How on earth do we do this? Yeah. So we're going to back up a moment, and I'm going to show you some slides of some wrathful deities that are often practiced. We've done a few deity practices in our group before. We've done White Tara, Amitabha, where we actually become the deities and embody their qualities and then radiate them out to all beings. In essence, this is how we practice or can practice with wrathful deities, although it's important to have guidance. It's important to have someone who can nuance how you work with these powerful energies. So we're not going to do a wrathful deity meditation tonight. That may be, if people are interested, can be the subject of a retreat or a series of workshops. So, but I am going to show you, let me just share my screen here. Where's my thingamajig? There it is. And now I need to move this out of the way. So this is a mandala, or mandala. Often you will see at the center of this mandala the yidam. The yidam is a Y-I-D-A-M. These are the deities that we meditate on and basically become. We take on, we receive their qualities, we dissolve the deity, and then we become the deity. We dissolve them into our own heart, and then we embody the qualities and radiate them out to others. So in a way, we become a channel or a conduit. And so it's hard to see here at the center of this mandala, but there is a wrathful deity and his consort. Often you will see them together in what is called yabyom. Yabyom is the union of the feminine and the masculine together to exemplify non-duality and union of energies. And it's often depicted in sexual posture, but that's for another time. I have to go back to the beginning here. So this fellow is one of the depictions. This is Yamantaka. Yamantaka. And here we can see all of these heads and skulls around Yamantaka, as well as other sort of iconography. We're not going to go into a whole lot of detail about the iconography because we'd be here all night doing this. It's fun, yeah. But the point here is that as we find in Hindu traditions, in some of the wrathful deities in Hindu traditions like Durga or Kali, Shiva the destroyer, often we will see them trampling on skulls or on heads of demons. And really what these beings represent is ignorance. They represent delusion that keeps the cycle of suffering perpetuating. And so what we're looking at here is we're looking at basically the fierceness of trampling and cutting the roots of ignorance off, and sort of the triumph, the victory of real wisdom, sharp, clear wisdom. So Yamantaka is interestingly the wrathful emanation of Manjushri. So some of you may know who Manjushri is. He is the embodiment of clear wisdom. Sometimes he's pictured with a flaming sword, and that sword is there specifically to cut the roots of ignorance off, right? This sharp sword of wisdom. Those of you who know Sarigata, we do a song about Manjushri. Om Marapajana Dihi. That's the chant. So this big fellow here is the even more fierce, powerful, wrathful form of Manjushri. These deities are often on a spectrum. Yeah, and as it's important to understand that in Vajrayana Buddhism, these are all qualities that we embody, that we have at the heart of who we are. These are representations, images of beings that, of energies that we carry already. This is Mahakala. Remember that sweet, nice poem that I just read? This is the guy who was talking to me. And remembering that Mahakala is a guardian. he is an emanation of fierce compassion, to the point where nothing negative, nothing that is an obstacle to wisdom and to true compassion can penetrate this fierce energy. This is one reason why these Dharmapala are called Dharma protectors. That's what Dharmapala means, Dharma protector. That they are protecting the space in which we practice with fierceness. Nothing can get through. And the fierceness is not as violent as these depictions might seem. They are actually fearsome because they repel. I mean, nothing can really touch them. Yeah. It's like having a really strong shield in the midst of a storm. This blurry image, I'm sorry it's so blurry and pixelated. This is black Tara. Now, we don't really talk much about black Tara very often. We've done white Tara practice. Green Tara is also very common to practice. So green Tara is born out of compassion, the great Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of boundless love. And because Avalokiteshvara, this Bodhisattva of great compassion, is so moved by our suffering that he sheds tears for us. And out of one eye, the right eye, comes green Tara, out of the tear of the right eye. And she is an embodiment of the divine feminine. She embodies protection, like a mother just holding her newborn in her arms and holding her close. Nothing can touch her. It's green Tara, the merciful, loving protection of green Tara. And out of the left eye comes white Tara. And white Tara is also emerging out of Avalokiteshvara's tear in the left eye. She represents a sense of guidance, what we might call spiritual guidance, discernment, good merit, meaning that what we do actually has a wholesome outcome, the things that we, how we react and respond to challenges and to life, as well as strength of knowledge and insight and all of those things. So that's white Tara. But here we have black Tara. Black Tara is really interesting. She is actually as fearsome as she often appears. She is the destroyer of negativity. And she is also that which does away with that which separates. So she's really one of the great unifiers. Black Tara says, you are all one, and whatever is going to pull you apart, I will protect you and bring you back together again. So in her role as fierce, and nothing can touch Black Tara, she is really that protector of the space so that wholesome progress in meditation is possible. And so when we become Black Tara, we actually facilitate that for ourselves, for our own mind, and for all beings who cultivate, who practice. This is one of the reasons why after that weekend, this was back in 2019, so we're talking about, 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, I've been practicing a lot with Mahakala. I've been doing the chant. I think we did it here on a Sunday night once or twice in the past. It's been a while. And part of that is there's sometimes we might feel a need to really create a space of safety if we're going to sit to practice, if our motivation is feeling weak or flimsy. Because Mahakala, doing the chant and visualizing as we chant, first creating a space of safety around us where we are, where nothing outside, nothing external or distracting can get in. But we're also creating a space of protection around our own mind. We're creating a space where our resolve and sort of the depth of our intention to practice is really authentic. And so in a way, Dharma protection is also about protecting the space of the mind and clearing it so that practice has a chance to arise more freely and naturally. And it also has this capacity when we practice with these wrathful beings to send out the wish for protection for all beings who are practicing. In Vajrayana, it's those who are practicing Dharma, those who are practicing the path of the Bodhisattva, of easing suffering, or cultivating their own mind and making it fertile for enlightenment. And so we send this wish out to all beings who are cultivating. We can do this regardless, perhaps, even regardless of whatever tradition they're practicing in. But all beings who are seeking truth and awakening, may they be protected in their practice. And so this is why it's not just self-involved, but it also then begins with the seed of our own mind and radiating it out to all living beings everywhere, that all beings cultivating awakening, realization are protected in their practice. And so Black Tara too is one of these guardians. Here we have an interesting fellow, Vajrakilaya. Vajrakilaya, another fierce. Sometimes these beings are depicted in a really deep, dark blue color. Sometimes they're black, sometimes they're red. In fact, Red Tara, whose name is Kurukula, Red Tara appears red as well. This is why she's called Red Tara. So there are various forms of deities that alternate from red to blue to black. And here we have Vajrakilaya. Vajrakilaya embodies enlightened activity. Yeah. This is the activities of all the Buddhas that are beneficial, but they're also imbued with just profound, uncompromising clarity and wisdom. Yeah, there's no wavering here. There's pure confidence. This is another way that we can look at these wrathful deities as supreme confidence. Not necessarily in a conceptual way, but in a way that arises naturally by experiencing the direct form of what in Zen is called suchness, or clear awareness. You know it when you drop in. Yeah, there's no more questioning. That kind of confidence. Yeah, not a confidence that reifies itself within the three poisons: greed, hatred, and delusion, but confidence born out of shunyata, or what's sometimes translated as emptiness. I prefer to translate shunyata as profound openness, or deep fullness without content. That's another way to look at it. Anyway, the quality of mind that is spacious, clear, unarisen with forms, with distractions, with concepts and delusion, projections. The other thing that Vajrakilaya is very good at is removing obstacles in our practice. So in some ways, in Hinduism, you may have heard of Ganesh or Ganesha. This is Vajrakilaya. Part of his job is to help us on the path to remove obstacles, and also to prevent hostility to compassion. So if you're ever trying to be compassionate and really, really offering someone an olive branch of your love, and someone is really hostile to you, this is where Vajrakilaya ideally gets involved and says, compassion, regardless of where the hostility is coming from. This is another aspect of Vajrakilaya being a Dharma protector who protects us from the hostility when we're opening heart. It's spacious with boundless compassion. So you can start to see here, there's a picture of qualities that each of these beings represent in terms of strength, yeah, strength of response, and uncompromising strength. Here we have, this is our last slide. This is Vajra Yogini. Vajra Yogini. And Vajra Yogini, she's a representation of a very high being, a high deity. This is not a Buddha, but she is, Vajra Yogini is a very active form of Dharma protector. As with the others, you can see the fire around her. She has a spear, again with the little heads on it. Those are these are the heads of ignorance. She's holding a Vajra bell and a conch in her right hand. These all have symbolism, sort of the 8 characteristics. Yeah. So anyway, this gives you an idea of some of these. Let me make sure this was the last slide. Yeah, that's it. Powerful energy that is there to help us with all the different aspects of that which seeks to undermine our practice, whether it's internal or external. There was a period where I was having some issues, which I won't go into much detail, but I was having some financial issues. This was several years ago. And I was just being harassed by a collections for a medical office. And I was just obsessing on it, worrying, how am I going to take care of these bills? And they just keep mounting and stuff. And I remember trying to do a retreat, and I just could not get rid of this attachment and this feeling within me of anger about how I was being treated, and very much unfairly. And it eventually all got resolved just fine. I know a couple of you have had similar issues with medical bills and that kind of thing. And so what I did was, this was actually almost right after the Mahakala weekend at Karmaling. And I began to chant and beat this drum, and chanting the Om Mahakala Hum Hey, and then banging the drum over and over. And as I did this, channeled all of my energy into my heart, and also the wish and this force of protection to almost create a space around me and within me to all of this negative energy I was experiencing. And then ultimately, almost to create a bubble, and then sending out that sense of space and protection to all beings who are also feeling persecuted or feeling what I was feeling. May all beings practicing Dharma have the space and the sense of safety and refuge to cultivate. So this is one example of, and it was a game changer. I had a wonderful retreat, and I didn't even really think about it after that. And so this is what I'm saying about sort of the power. The wrath wasn't the point. The narrative of the wrath wasn't the point. The story that keeps the suffering alive, that becomes disentangled with the rawness of that energy of anger. And so this is how we can work with it. We are harnessing the raw feeling, we're allowing it to arise, and yet we're also relinquishing the story that it's telling us about ourselves, about the world, about whether it's arising from fear or pain, even trauma. And when we do that, when we're able to just relinquish the narrative and come into just the energy, that force of energy, that can then be used as a motivator. There's a lot of vitality there. There's also a lot of creativity and insight. But the fog of the narrative is no longer taking over, but rather we're letting that energy just exist. Yeah. And motivating either to do something that we maybe need to do, but the skillfulness, the skillful means is at the heart of the matter. So I'll only say a couple more things about this. So what we're doing is taking this wrathful energy from a destructive feeling, a destructive impulse, and turning it into an intervention with ourselves first. Yeah. And we do it not because we want to destroy anything or anyone. That feeling may be part of it, but again, that's part of the narrative. But we do it because we freaking care. Yeah. We care. We care about ourselves. We care about what's happening around us. What we're doing is taking ourselves out of the hatred, because that's the part that drags us back into the three poisons: greed, hatred, and then the delusion follows easily. So things like righteousness, condemnation, judgment, impatience are things that separate us. They're things that easily lead to dehumanizing another. But if the context here is service, if the context here is wishing well-being for all beings, as we do in our dedication and in our motivation, and the good in the beginning and good at the end, the context of service remains. We really need to put our money where our mouth is, and it really is about all beings, even those that we may not be happy with. And so in the context here of unifying, in service as a unifier, skillful means is really about cultivating those qualities that are motivating and creative. There's an extraordinary creativity in anger as well, but it's not that destructive kind of thing. So part of this is encountering ignorance, encountering hate, and being fiercely loyal to bringing humanity back. Being really loyal to humanity, to dignity. That can be where the confidence really roots us very strongly. After all, wrath, anger is a heightened vibration. So let's use it. Let's use that heightened vibration to disentangle the narrative, if it's possible, by coming into breath, coming into body, and circulating all that energy into the heart. Yeah. What sometimes can happen is, you get angry, you feel it in your body, and then you'll say something or you'll react because you don't know what to do with it. That energy has to go somewhere. And then it affects another person, and then you feel bad. And then it's not just anger, it's regret, it's self-reproach, it's judgment. And then it becomes fear. And, if we have any attachment issues, the fear of abandonment, or that somebody then, there can be a whole spiral there. And it's hard in the moment of the reactive habit body playing itself out. It's hard to just stop the whole process. Yep, that whole thing from playing out. Unless you have a space to just say, okay, if you're with your daughter and you're in a car, you can't do anything until maybe you get home. Yeah, this is why the Buddha said sometimes you have to endure. But it may be that you can break away for a moment, and this is why it's helpful, go walk around outside or what have you, and come into your body and acknowledge, and rather than try to get rid of the feelings, as you said, hold it gently. But even if we can't do that, it's okay to chant and feel, because I can feel it when I get hot. My awareness it's like wide open. It's like crystal clear. Yeah. And I'm at a place where the narrative doesn't hijack the awareness. Yeah. It's just this fierce, open, clear, the truth of how I feel and of what I'm seeing. Yeah. And there may still be a subtle egoic narrative in how I'm seeing it. Yeah. So I have to be very careful with what the mind is doing. But if I'm not able to do that, I had a therapist once who used to bang her pillow with her tennis racket. She was one of the wisest women. She was 94 when I was in therapy with her. This was back in like 2000, 2001. And she said, look, you have to get it out of your body. You don't want to keep all that in there. So if you need to bang a pillow with a tennis racket, do it. Walk, run, do something physical, but it needs to move through us. And maybe then we can say, okay, I'm not going to judge myself because this was a messenger for me. Where's my issue here? And maybe they really did do something wrong and I have a right to be mad. But how I respond will depend on how I relate to my anger. And so it's like, okay, let's just put the brakes on for a minute, or wait till the car stops rolling. Not judge the process. Hold it gently, as you said, when we're able to. But if we're still hot, there can be a way to practice with the force of that energy, where the narrative isn't controlling, isn't hijacking the mind anymore, but just the, this fire of vitality can be bright. That's okay. That's the rawness I was talking about. Yeah.
So can we direct those energy?
Come in, Darren. Yes, come on in. Go ahead.
So actually, a follow-up question: can we direct those energy to make us enlightened?
That energy fundamentally is exactly that. It's in there. It's in there at the heart of it. So, but it takes practice to work with that. And the other thing too, I think if you're able to chant, sometimes in the midst of the feeling, that's the only thing we can do. If I sit there and I'm chanting as a way to ask for protection from all the stuff, the volcanoes in my mind, Om Mahakala Hum Pe, Om Mahakala Hum Pe, Om. And we do it not just for ourselves, but we do it for all beings who are struggling. That's a game changer. Then it turns to compassion and it unifies us with others. After all, others too feel this very feeling. Whatever I'm feeling, others are feeling it too. And now the lens is much wider.